A severe weather outbreak is already in motion across a massive stretch of the eastern United States, and at the exact same moment, a tropical storm has just formed in the Gulf of Mexico for the first time in weeks. Two completely separate but equally dangerous weather systems are bearing down on millions of Americans within the next 48 hours. And if you live anywhere from the Ohio Valley through the Northeast, or along the Gulf Coast from the Florida Panhandle all the way toward Louisiana, this forecast is going to matter enormously to you today. We are talking about a powerful upper-level trough diving deep into the eastern half of the country, triggering not one but multiple rounds of severe thunderstorms capable of producing widespread damaging wind gusts, large hail, and tornadoes, including the very real possibility of an isolated strong tornado in a few specific corridors where atmospheric conditions are particularly volatile. And while that severe weather threat clears the East Coast by tomorrow, all eyes will then shift to Tropical Storm Bertha, a newly named system swirling in the northern Gulf right now, bringing the threat of flash flooding and storm surge to coastal communities stretching across the Gulf Coast. The next 48 hours are going to be extraordinarily intense and extraordinarily dangerous for a lot of people across a very large area of this country. Let's walk through every piece of this forecast right now so you know exactly what is coming, when it is coming, and most importantly, what you need to do to stay safe when it arrives. Let us begin where the immediate danger is greatest right now, and that is across the Ohio Valley and the Northeast, where today's severe weather setup is significant and already beginning to unfold. A widespread outbreak of severe thunderstorms is firmly on the table for today, and the Storm Prediction Center has placed a large and densely populated portion of the region under an enhanced risk of severe weather. That is a level 3 out of 5 on the severe weather risk scale, and it covers a wide corridor that includes some of the most populated cities in the entire country. If you live in or near Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., nearly all of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, northern Kentucky, or southern Ohio, you are sitting directly inside that enhanced risk zone right now as you are watching this forecast. That designation means the threat of severe weather today is not marginal. It is not something to casually keep an eye on. It is organized, it is significant, and it demands your full and complete attention starting right now. Surrounding that enhanced risk area, there's a large level 2 slight risk zone in place that captures even more major population centers across the region. Nashville, Raleigh, Norfolk, Richmond, and even New York City fall within this slight risk category today, meaning damaging and dangerous storms are certainly possible for those areas as well, even if conditions are not quite as volatile as what is expected inside the core of that enhanced zone. And then farther out from that, a marginal risk of severe weather at level 1 extends from Memphis to Charlotte and into western New England. So when you step back and look at the full footprint of today's severe weather threat, it is enormous, stretching from the mid-south all the way up through the northern tier of the Northeast, covering hundreds of millions of people across one of the most heavily populated regions of the United States. Now let us talk about the specific threats you need to be prepared for today, because understanding precisely what is coming can make all the difference between being ready and being caught completely off guard. The primary hazard today, the one that will likely affect the greatest raw number of people, is the threat of widespread damaging wind gusts from these thunderstorm complexes. When you look at the wind threat probabilities mapped out for today, the picture becomes very clear very quickly. If you are living in the highest probability zone, represented by the pink shading on the wind probability map, you are looking at a 45% chance of damaging winds within a 25-mile radius of your location. The red zone carries a 30% probability of damaging winds, the yellow sits at 15%, and the outer marginal area in brown holds around a 5% chance. The basic rule here is simple and straightforward. The brighter your color on that map, the worse conditions are going to be in your neighborhood today. If you are in that pink zone, you absolutely need to be prepared and fully ready right now. Because we're talking about the real potential for 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts from these thunderstorm complexes as they move through your area. That is the kind of wind speed that knocks down trees that have been standing for decades, takes out power lines across entire neighborhoods, and turns unsecured outdoor objects into fast-moving, dangerous projectiles. This is not a situation you want to be caught off guard by under any circumstances. Hail is also a component of today's severe weather threat, though it is not the headline concern in the same way that damaging winds are. The hail risk today is roughly in the pocket change size category. We are talking quarters and half dollars in terms of size, not the golf ball or baseball-sized hail that would make this an extraordinary hail event worthy of its own headline, but certainly large enough to damage vehicles, break windows, destroy outdoor furniture, and cause real problems for anything left exposed. While hail will be present in some of today's storms, it should not be what you are primarily focused on today. Your primary concerns are wind and tornadoes, and we need to spend a considerable amount of time on tornadoes right now. Let us talk about the tornado threat today in detail, because this is real, it is elevated in specific areas, and there are some absolutely critical details that every person living in the affected corridor needs to understand before these storms arrive in their neighborhood. There is a threat of a few tornadoes across a broad region today, and the elevated tornado risk is particularly concentrated across Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia. Given the overall atmospheric setup and the environment that is currently in place across that region, there is a realistic and credible possibility of an isolated EF2 or stronger tornado developing today. That is not a certainty. It depends significantly on what storm mode looks like and whether discrete supercells can maintain their organization long enough before storms begin to cluster and merge together. But an isolated strong tornado is absolutely on the table for the Ohio Valley today, and it would be irresponsible not to communicate that clearly. And the elevated tornado risk does not stop in the Ohio Valley. Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York City are all included in the elevated tornado risk zone as well today. If you live in those cities or anywhere in their surrounding suburbs and metro areas, you need to take this seriously. For areas farther out, Cleveland, Buffalo, Norfolk, Richmond, and up into western New England, the tornado risk is more isolated, but it still exists, and every single one of you needs to have weather alerts actively turned on and a tornado action plan ready to execute at a moment's notice. Now, here's something that is critically important and cannot possibly be overstated, and it has everything to do with the nature of any tornadoes that develop today. Right now, we are looking at very high precipitable water values across this region, values potentially reaching 2 inches or even higher in some locations. That matters enormously for how any tornadoes today will behave and how visible they will be. When precipitable water values are elevated to that degree, the atmosphere is holding an enormous amount of moisture, and that moisture tends to wrap around thunderstorms very rapidly and completely, creating what meteorologists call rain-wrapped tornadoes. A rain-wrapped tornado is one that is completely surrounded and obscured by heavy rainfall, making it essentially invisible to the naked eye until it is dangerously, life-threateningly close to you. You cannot see a rain-wrapped tornado coming by looking out your window. You cannot get a visual warning by watching the sky. This is emphatically not a day to step outside and try to spot a funnel cloud on the horizon. This is not a day to grab your phone and try to capture video. If tornadoes develop today, and the atmospheric evidence strongly suggests at least a few will, those tornadoes will almost certainly be rain-wrapped, and that characteristic makes them significantly more dangerous to anyone who does not heed shelter-in-place guidance immediately the moment a tornado warning is issued for their location. When the warning comes, you get inside immediately. You get to your interior room on the lowest floor. You do not wait to visually confirm the tornado before taking action, because by the time you might see it through the rain, it may already be too late. There is one additional atmospheric parameter worth examining here that further underscores the genuine severity of today's setup. The significant tornado parameter, a composite metric that meteorologists use to assess the overall favorability of an atmospheric environment for producing significant long-track tornadoes, is going to be elevated at times today across portions of the risk area. This is the kind of data that tells you the atmosphere has the full suite of ingredients assembled for not just any tornado, but potentially a strong and dangerous tornado if the right storm can form and take advantage of the environment before things become too chaotic. Storm mode will play a massive role in whether the absolute worst-case scenario comes together today, but the atmospheric environment is certainly capable of supporting it. Now let us walk through the timing of today's severe weather in detail, because knowing when these storms are going to arrive in your specific area gives you the opportunity to be genuinely prepared rather than scrambling at the last moment. This morning, the severe weather threat is relatively limited compared to what comes later. There may be some isolated activity in the early hours, perhaps a 60-mile-per-hour wind gust here and there, or some quarter to half-dollar-sized hail in isolated locations. But the truly significant severe weather threat is not going to be the dominant story during the morning hours. That changes rapidly and dramatically as we push toward the midday period. Around noon, things begin to escalate in a very serious way across the region. By lunchtime, large clusters of thunderstorms are expected to be developing and intensifying, and severe weather activity will really start ramping up significantly. There is also a possibility, and this is absolutely worth paying close attention to, that one or two isolated discrete supercells could develop out ahead of the main cluster of storms. Models have been hinting at this kind of development near the Cincinnati area, and if a discrete or semi-discrete supercell does manage to organize in that region during the early afternoon, the tornado risk around 1 in the afternoon local time would be notably elevated. Even if a tornado does not ultimately materialize from that specific scenario, damaging wind gusts will be ongoing up and down the entire storm complex throughout the afternoon hours regardless. Wherever you have a more organized linear segment of storms, There will also be the additional risk of QLCS tornadoes. That is, tornadoes that are embedded within and spawned by a fast-moving squall line rather than a traditional rotating supercell. QLCS tornadoes can be brief, intense, and extraordinarily difficult to warn for with any meaningful lead time. As we move into the 2 to 3 squeezed window in the afternoon, storms will be pushing through central Pennsylvania with activity near areas like St. Mary's and moving towards State College. By 3, the storm coverage across the region is going to be very widespread, stretching all the way from Syracuse, New York, down through West Virginia, and extending westward through Louisville and Evansville and Cape Girardeau. The peak severe weather window for the majority of people in the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic corridor is going to fall squarely between noon and 4 in the afternoon. That is your most critical window today. That is when you need to be most alert, most prepared, and most ready to take immediate shelter if warnings are issued for your location. By 4 to 5 in the afternoon, the picture becomes even more complex as multiple distinct lines and clusters of thunderstorms are going to be simultaneously active across the region at the same time. There will be storm activity in western Kentucky. Another cluster near Louisville. More storms pushing through West Virginia. A line stretching across Pennsylvania and New York. Potentially another line in upstate New York. And possibly additional storm development right near Lake Erie. The storm coverage at this point in the afternoon is going to be widespread, dense, and complicated. By 5, these storms will be approaching Washington, D.C., Allentown, and Scranton. There is an additional possibility of an isolated discrete supercell developing near the Washington, D.C. area during the late afternoon hours. The probability of that very specific scenario is not extremely high, but it is not negligible either, and it absolutely deserves to be on your radar if you live anywhere in the D.C. metro area. Moving into the 6 to 7 evening time frame, storm activity will be pushing toward New York City, with additional storms continuing to move through portions of the Mid-Atlantic and down toward the Nashville region as well. As we push toward late evening, the overall severe weather threat gradually begins to diminish. By approximately 8 to 9 tonight, the most intense period of severe weather will be winding down across the region. What remains after that point will primarily be heavy rainfall, frequent lightning, gusty winds, and perhaps some small hail. But the truly organized outbreak level severe weather threat should be largely over by the time we get meaningfully past sunset tonight. So for most of you, the story tonight gradually shifts from severe thunderstorms to heavy rain and a general wind down as the system pushes east toward the coast. Now let us talk about Wednesday, because even after today's main severe weather outbreak clears out, there's still a threat worth walking through carefully for portions of the East Coast on Wednesday. Wednesday is not expected to be an outbreak level event in the same way today is. Let us be clear about that. However, damaging wind gusts are still going to be on the table for portions of the coast, and there is also a low but real isolated tornado risk that genuinely deserves your attention. The corridor of greatest concern on Wednesday sits east of Richmond, Virginia, where the significant tornado parameter values could actually reach as high as 1, 2, or even 3 in a very small geographic corridor. That is enough atmospheric favorability that if a supercell can organize and take advantage of the environment, an isolated tornado is entirely possible on Wednesday. The slight risk of severe weather on Wednesday covers Richmond, Virginia Beach, and the area near Raleigh. A marginal risk zone stretches from Maine all the way down through South Carolina. The primary threat across that broader Wednesday risk area is isolated to widely scattered damaging wind gusts. The hail risk is not currently significant enough to formally outline. And while the overall tornado risk on Wednesday is low, the highest individual probability will be focused near Norfolk and Virginia Beach. If you are in those areas, Wednesday is a day to remain weather aware. Keep your alert systems active and know your shelter plan, even though you should not be expecting a major widespread event. Now we pivot to the Gulf of Mexico because there is major breaking weather news there as well, and it is going to affect millions of people along the Gulf Coast over the next 48 hours. For the first time in several weeks, the most recent Gulf system was Tropical Storm Arthur, which made landfall over in Texas. We have a brand new tropical cyclone in the Gulf. Tropical Storm Bertha has officially formed, becoming the second named storm of the current Atlantic hurricane season. Right now, Bertha is a relatively weak tropical storm with maximum sustained winds of around 40 miles per hour. When you examine the satellite presentation of the system closely, the structure tells you very directly why it is so weak at this stage. The deep convection, the intense organized thunderstorm activity that serves as the engine of a tropical cyclone, is almost entirely concentrated on the southern side of the storm. The northern side, the western side, and the eastern side of the circulation are essentially exposed and devoid of meaningful deep convective activity. That striking asymmetry in Bertha's structure is the result of two factors working powerfully against its intensification right now: vertical wind shear and dry air intrusion occurring in the lower levels of the atmosphere. Those are two of the most common and most effective enemies of tropical cyclone development, and both are actively hampering Bertha's ability to organize and strengthen right now. So what does Bertha's future track and intensity look like over the next 48 hours? In terms of the possibility of this system becoming a hurricane, that scenario appears highly unlikely given the current environmental constraints. For Bertha to make any kind of run at hurricane strength, it would essentially need to track much farther to the south, staying well south of the Louisiana coastline, and that track simply does not appear to be what most models are suggesting at this time. The cone of uncertainty is still fairly large right now, as is typical for a tropical system this early in its life cycle. But the general consensus among the available models is that Bertha is going to track northward and approach the Louisiana coastline as we move into late Tuesday night and through Wednesday. The expected landfall area is near New Orleans, with the timing looking to fall somewhere in the late Wednesday to Thursday window. In terms of intensity at the point of landfall, the current thinking is that Bertha will reach somewhere in the middle range of tropical storm status, with maximum sustained winds potentially peaking around 50 miles per hour. After making its way through southern Louisiana, the system should continue to gradually weaken as it pushes toward the Houston area. If this track holds as currently projected, and it is always important to remember that track forecasting for tropical systems carries inherent uncertainty, the most significant impacts from Bertha for Gulf Coast communities will come primarily from two sources. The first, and arguably most immediate concern, is storm surge. Even a relatively weak tropical storm is fully capable of producing meaningful storm surge when it makes landfall, particularly in low-lying coastal areas. Storm surge from Bertha is something that every Gulf Coast resident in the potential impact zone should be watching very closely as this storm approaches over the coming hours and days. The second major concern is flooding rainfall. Tropical systems are extraordinary rainfall-producing machines, even when they are relatively weak, and Bertha's tropical moisture content gives it real potential to drop significant rainfall in some areas near and around the landfall zone. That said, here is an important nuance in the current rainfall forecast for Bertha that is worth understanding clearly. The majority of the heavy rainfall associated with this system is expected to remain offshore, at least based on the current projected track. Looking at the National Weather Service blend of models, the heaviest precipitation is projected to stay mostly over open Gulf waters. The area most likely to see any meaningful onshore flooding rainfall is going to be the New Orleans region itself, given its proximity to the expected landfall location. For most Gulf Coast communities farther removed from that immediate landfall zone, the onshore rainfall impacts should be more limited, but that is entirely contingent on the storm maintaining something close to its currently projected track. Any deviation in Bertha's path could shift the rainfall footprint meaningfully. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, Bertha is expected to continue its gradual spiral northward through the northern Gulf as it makes its slow approach toward the Louisiana coast. There is one additional threat worth clearly flagging for tonight. As some of Bertha's outer rain bands push toward the Florida Panhandle and southern Alabama, there's a low-end tornado risk associated with those outer bands. Outer tropical rain bands can occasionally spawn brief and weak tornadoes, and if you live near Tallahassee in the Florida Panhandle or in southern Alabama tonight, you should not completely rule out an isolated tornado. It is a low probability event, but awareness in those areas tonight is genuinely important. As Bertha continues its track through the overnight hours and into Wednesday morning, gusty winds will be present across portions of the northern Gulf Coast, and the storm surge threat will increase progressively as the system draws closer to the Louisiana shoreline. So stepping back and looking at this entire 48-hour weather picture together as one unified, coherent forecast, what you have is a remarkably active and genuinely dangerous setup playing out simultaneously across a massive portion of the country. Today, the primary focus is the severe weather outbreak targeting the Ohio Valley and the Northeast, with the most dangerous and most active window running from roughly noon through 4 or 5 hours this afternoon. Enhanced risk areas covering Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania, West Virginia, northern Kentucky, and southern Ohio face the highest combined probability of 60 to 70 mile per hour wind gusts, the potential for an isolated EF2 or stronger tornado, and the critically important concern of rain-wrapped tornadoes that absolutely require immediate shelter rather than storm watching. By this evening, that severe weather threat gradually winds down, though heavy rain and gusty winds persist through the overnight. Wednesday then brings a secondary round of lower-level severe weather concerns along the East Coast, focused primarily on damaging winds and a very isolated tornado risk near Norfolk and Virginia Beach. And simultaneously through all of this, Tropical Storm Bertha is approaching the Louisiana Gulf Coast, expected to arrive as a middle-grade tropical storm with maximum sustained winds around 50 miles per hour, bringing storm surge concerns and flooding rainfall potential near New Orleans, with its outer bands already capable of producing isolated tornadoes tonight in the Florida Panhandle and southern Alabama. If there is one singular message to absorb from this forecast today, it is this: do not wait to prepare. The combination of rain-wrapped tornado potential, multiple rounds of severe thunderstorms, and a simultaneously approaching tropical storm system means that the margin for error across a very large portion of this country is extremely small right now, and the consequences of being caught completely unprepared are genuinely serious. Have your phone charged and in your hand. Have your wireless emergency alerts turned on and confirmed active. Know exactly where you will go and what you will do the moment a tornado warning is issued for your specific location. If you live along the Gulf Coast, know your storm surge evacuation routes and take the flooding and surge threat seriously, even from a tropical storm that is not particularly intense at this stage. We are going to be live later today to walk through the severe weather outbreak in real time as it unfolds across the Ohio Valley and the Northeast. The number of warnings that are likely to be issued across such a wide and heavily populated area today is going to be significant, and you're going to want real-time guidance as this event develops through the afternoon. If you're not already subscribed to this channel right now, before this event unfolds, is the time to do it. Hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you are notified the instant we go live today. We will be with you every step of the way through this dangerous and dynamic weather day. Thank you so very much for watching today's full forecast. Whether you have been following this channel for years or this is genuinely your very first time here, we are grateful you chose to spend this time with us today. And we sincerely hope that the information in this forecast helps keep you and every person you care about safe through what is going to be a very significant 48 hours of weather across a large part of this country. Stay weather aware. Stay inside when warnings are issued. Trust your alert systems completely, and we will see you live later today as this powerful and dangerous weather pattern continues to develop and unfold in real time.